Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com. At Natal's Air Conditioning, our motto is service honoring the golden rule. We're dedicated to providing the best air conditioning solution for your home or business in the New Orleans metro area. More information is available at 504-821-0005. Natal's Air Conditioning, a proud sponsor of the St. Jude Dream Home. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shocking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Each and every Thursday night right here on WLAE TV, we break it down for you. Saints, LSU, Tulane, the topics of the day, and we got a great guest for you tonight. You ask for him all the time. We try to get him once every couple of months. He's got a busy schedule. My man, Mike Detillier of WWL Radio. Mike, as always, thanks for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you, Eric.
Mike, we always like to start off letting folks know a little bit about what's going on in your life, and you know what, from your great magazine to everything you're doing, kind of lay it out for folks where they can find you.
Oh, good gracious. You can go on MikeDetillier.com, SaintsReport.com, on Twitter at Mike Detillier. I do 14 college pregame shows a week now.
That's amazing.
Two pre and post professional, so it keeps me busy along with a couple other television, radio shows all across the country and also certainly locally. So it does keep me very busy, and but I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like the general, that smell of the war, so to speak. No matter if it beats me down or not, I love to do it. So it's great for me.
Well, thank you for being with us
tonight.
My pleasure. Let's kick it off. We normally start Saints, but obviously the big topic this week has been the Ray Rice situation, and it kind of morphed into whether Roger Goodell should stay as the commissioner. First of all, Your thoughts on Ray Rice. I know you've seen the video at this point. Just your reaction.
The video is shocking, even though I think you pretty much knew what happened there. I disagree with a good friend of mine, Colin Cowherd, that said that the video is meaningless. That my thing about it is, without the video, Ray Rice's suspension is as is. The video triggered the dominoes all across the board of what will happen. My comparison is if you didn't have the Zapruder film back in 1963 when President Kennedy got shot, you'd have had a lot of different interpretations of what went on. Now again, what was happening in that elevator, you pretty much knew, but when you saw it, how shocking it was, similar to the Zapruder film. I think that set off a tidal wave of events, and now you see the commissioner just wallowing around. The big question mark I have is it his incompetence or people around him incompetent, or is it the cover-up? This almost is Nixon-like, Watergate-like in how it's being done. Mm-hmm. The other 32 owners that put him in place, Eric, he's making them a ton of money. You look at where the Saints franchise were just a few years back and what it's graded at today. Mm-hmm. Almost all those NFL teams have taken a big jump. Yes. He's not the commissioner of the players. He's the commissioner of the owners.
Yes, he is.
Now, he talks like a big sheriff, okay, where he wears the badge and he goes all out. No, he's misfired. He's like Barney Fife. I mean, every shot is misfired, everything across the board. It's a public relations disaster. Did you need a domestic abuse policy to tell you he did wrong?
Right.
I mean, how can you come up with that? What I think happened is basically this. I think the owner of the Ravens, kind of behind the scenes, said, listen, Ray Rice has been a great guy. behind the scenes, he has really helped this community and done a lot of great things, and he has.
Yes.
There is no question about that. You cannot question that part. But you also can't question about what happened in that elevator, and those few seconds changed his life. My thing about it is, if you're in a relationship that bad that you have to hit a woman, you know what? You got to walk away and find you another woman.
Amen to that. I'm with you there. Also, the Roger Goodell situation. Saints fans are seething right now. You know, they feel like they've been wronged with the way he handled the bounty situation, that almost he targeted the organization. He was the one that talked about when he came in, the set of standards for the players, raising those set of standards. He was the one that talked about institutional control, that if you don't know, you should know. That again, you can't lie to the NFL. It seems as though the tables have turned here now, and he's kind of eating his words a little bit here. Mike, what's your interpretation of that? Are you agreeing with a lot of the national pundits that say, look, the AP said they've had this tape since April. Goodell's saying he's never saw it. Is it incompetence, or is it a cover-up? Are they lying? And what are the long-term ramifications in your mind?
I think it's a little bit of everything. It's incompetence. You can't even debate that.
I would agree with that.
Cover-up at what level? Is it at the lowest level or is it at the highest level? And we don't know all the information now, so that's difficult to say. All I know one thing is that I think that the commissioner on that so-called bounty gate, he was reacting to owners saying, you know what, that could have been us. And one day somebody's going to take a really bad hit and people are going to find out maybe that was, and that's always been a little bit of coin, make a big hit, that sort of thing. You know what? Let's take a presence on there. Let's make a situation where somebody pays the price for what's long been going on. We know about it. You come down hard on them because you know what? That could be my football team. I could be in court having to pay somebody $152 million, $200 million for some incident. So come down hard and let's get every general manager, assistant coach, head coach understanding what's at stake here. Again, that's owners telling him that he didn't come up with that by himself. You don't think he was pressured by some of the other owners to do that? And this is a game of name recognition. So I'm going to take it out on the Saints a little bit on them. They're a well-known football team. They have a coach that's, you know, maybe he's a little west of center with Greg Williams. And I don't like some of the things even maybe Sean Payton was doing. So I think that that's what the commissioner thought. I had the sword. I'm going to go after him and set an example, because I do not want to sit in a courtroom somewhere and say, I knew about maybe a little bit of money being placed on a big hit. I think it's almost the same situation with Ray Rice.
Mike, what happens next? Do you see Roger Goodell having to resign? Will there be some type of suspension of Roger Goodell by the owners? What do you think happens here? Especially, you know, going with the premise of, hey, you're the guy in charge. Right now it looks like lack of institutional control.
I agree 100%. I do not think he gets fired, because I know one thing, he's shelling out that money. And he is the guy to connect the dots. He's been in there for quite a while in different departments with the NFL. He knows how to get the money. And the NFL owners would have to say, I made a mistake by putting him in there. They're not going to say that. They're going to keep him in place, just kind of bow you back a little bit, take a little bit of wind, and keep walking forward. Somebody else is going to take the fall for this. Yeah. Somebody else is going to take that firing for this. But what we don't know is what we don't know. How far did it get up to the chain, and did he really know? If you listen to his words, he said basically, I wasn't knowledgeable about that tape. I didn't have knowledge of it. Basically, he's not saying the tape wasn't there. Right. He's just saying that I didn't have knowledge of it. If you read between the words, he's real crafty about getting into that thing. But he is the guy that has put a lot of money to these owners' pockets. And you know what? We do live, like it or not, in a 48-hour, 72-hour cycle of events.
No doubt about
and his thing is, I'm saying a novena tonight, hoping somebody else makes a bigger screw up than me.
Right.
And it's going to happen. Somebody else is going to knock you off the front page.
That's right. Knock you off the Twitter sphere, etc. Robert Mueller brought in now, former FBI director, to do an investigation. I kind of chuckled on my radio show today and saying, come on. First of all, we saw Louis Freeh come in and do an investigation within the New Orleans Saints. We've heard nothing about that investigation. The NFL is a private entity. They are not under any obligation to disclose what happens within that investigation. They can pick and choose what they ultimately let out. What do you think happens to that investigation? Is that PR?
That's nothing more than PR. Come on, nothing with that. The only guy who really had any sort of teeth into anything is during that Bountygate situation, Paul Tagliabue comes in and says, you know what? That was way too harsh for that sort of situation. He basically had a little bit of common sense with that, and he knew the league long time. He knew that this sort of thing was in place, and he would have handled it totally different than Roger Goodell. I think this was Roger's moment to put the badge up on his chest and say, I'm going to make an example of somebody. And I think he was led to that by a lot of owners in this league that said, you know what, I'm not sitting in that courtroom and they're not getting my money if something happens to another player who gets hurt and we targeted that guy. In this age of nothing being kept secret, things recorded, taped everywhere, you can't keep that a secret anymore. And I think that's a big part of it.
Mike, Saints fans love to hate Roger Goodell, and some of them obviously feel they have an axe to grind with him. What do you say to Saints fans out there about this particular situation as it equates to what happened with Bountygate?
Well, basically, he's handled it both the same way. He's incompetent. He has talked without having any facts in front of him, and it's always been mumbo jumbo. And he's getting a lot of things third hand. He's not doing any investigation. He's the commissioner of the National Football League. He's having other people handle it. Well, my thing about it is if other guys handle it that bad, then you better clean up your staff. But eventually it goes back to the buck stops here. It's your call. And only thing I know is that unless he would decide to resign, he's staying where he's at. I think he's going to try to bow that back and say, you know what, I'm going to take that wind a little bit, and I'm going to keep marching on. And the owners, we back you. Roger, you're doing a great job. He's making them a lot of money. That's what this game is all about. And what is happening today with the TV revenue, everything else across the board, they're in the most profitable time any time of the National Football League. So why would you get rid of a guy that's making you that kind of money?
We'll shift gears and talk a little Saints. 866-3200, 866-3200. Great to have Mike Detillier with us here on the program tonight. Man, I tell you what, always a close game. I think it's an incredible rivalry between Atlanta and the Saints. And I think because it's such a great rivalry because the fan bases are into it, the cities don't like each other. It's kind of unlike really anywhere else. But no one, I thought, saw or foresaw the play of the Saints defense. 16 missed tackles, receivers running free. Mike, first of all, your analysis of this game in terms of how the defense played.
568 yards total offense. It's the second most ever given up in Saints history. Listen, you and I have watched some bad defenses on this football team.
And, the flex.
and they didn't give that up?
That's right.
It was shocking. It wasn't surprising to me. It was shocking. And doing all these national shows kind of leading up into it, I mean, everybody was on the bandwagon that, you look at this defense. Eric, I think it's an old saying, but it's accurate. When much is given to you, much is expected. The stars didn't show up Sunday. Where was Junior Gillette? Where was Cameron Jordan? Where was Keenan Lewis? Kenny Vaccaro probably had the most nondescript game I ever remember in a Saints uniform.
I think Pro Football Focus had him missing six tackles. He didn't miss. What did he miss last year? One or two?
He didn't miss a lot.
Didn't miss a lot.
And then Jarvis Byrd forces one fumble, and that's about it. It was shocking. I think it goes to show you a little bit that 1 year doesn't equate to the next.
You're so true. That's so true.
And you know what? I do have to give Derek Curtin a lot of credit. I think in that contest, he out-schemed Rob Ryan. He had Rob and his defense on their heels on that football game. And I also look at it too, certainly the missed tackles, lack of a pass rush, but look who you were going against. You're talking about a makeshift offensive line. You lose your starting left tackle, and you've got one sack, and that was almost a gimme.
It was.
At the end of that game. The thing that disturbed me most was lack of communication. It reminded me a little bit of LSU's secondary linebackers last year. Everybody looking at one another like, hey, wait a minute. Weren't you supposed to cover him? And you could see it. You need the alpha dog. That's where you brought in Jarvis Byrd to be that communicator. Every great team defensively has a guy that, you know what, I know what I'm supposed to do, but also I'm telling everybody else what to do. You look at that Ravens defense 2 years ago. They had Bernard Pollard, Ed Reed, Ray Lewis telling everybody what to do. Last year, Seattle, Earl Thomas, Richard Sherman. Communication. There was a lack of it there. I think it did go to show the injury and the missed playing time. You saw what happened to your alpha dog and your leader, the guy that was supposed to do that communicating. You know what? He was looked as almost as confused. He knew what he had to do, but I think some of the other elements wasn't quite getting everybody in place. You saw it last year at LSU. You look at the difference this year. Look at the talent and how everybody knows what they're doing in the secondary today.
Another year in the system.
And so this doesn't get fixed overnight. I think you're going to be in for a couple weeks where teams are going to put some points on the board on you. And if I'm Cleveland, I saw what happened in the preseason. The Saints didn't stop the run. The Falcons didn't have a great running game. They ran the football against New Orleans over 6 yards a pop. I know how Cleveland got back in the game. They were down 27-3. I told a colleague of mine, Johnny Manziel show, week 2. All of a sudden, they come back, it's 27-27. They didn't do it by throwing the ball. They did it by running. Against a Pittsburgh Steelers defense, over 6 yards a carry in the second half.
Mike, Jarvis Byrd, on some of the TV clips, we saw 20 yards back. I don't know how you play any team. I mean, Atlanta's got some speed at the wide receiver position. There's no doubt. They've upgraded that position. When you bring in a guy like Devin Hester and you saw what he was able to do. That can't be part of their defense going forward, could it be?
Well, I think what they thought is that they could get pressure with just 4, drop 7 in coverage, and let Byrd play Willie Mays, let him play center field. Let him play center field and make a reaction. Problem with that is you got no pressure. I will say, I thought this was Matt Ryan's best football game I've ever seen him play.
I agree with you, Mike.
He looked poised, even with pressure a little bit.
Never seen him move like that before.
And he moved around in the pocket. Julio Jones is a gold chip wide receiver. Now, Roddy White is still a good player. He's not a great player anymore. He's still good.
But he is helped by Jones.
He's helped by Jones. Also, he's helped by the other 2 elements. Harry Douglas, who is a good number 3 guy.
So underrated.
But the X factor is Devin Hester. You put him in the slot, and all of a sudden the Saints got to put Kenny Vaccaro on him. It was like, wait a minute.
He can't hang him.
Not deep
that
down.
kind of speed.
And so if you give a guy enough time to throw the football, that's really going to be an element that I think Atlanta, defensively, they are what they are. Not a good team. They're going to give up a ton of yards, ton of points. They're also going to be able to score. The one thing is, I know they averaged over 6 yards a carry against the Saints. That ain't going to work against another team. That was so many missed tackles in that game, but they can throw the football. I think the miscommunication part, that's going to take a little while to make sure everything gets put in. The shocking thing is, this football team who had 50 sacks last year got 1 against a makeshift offensive line. Eric, I would have bet anything that would have not happened in this football game, and that was the most shocking thing about it. You can sugarcoat it and say, listen, Brandon Cooks had a great first half, and he did. He didn't play like a rookie. Fantastic the way the running game really came alive.
Offensively, you really don't have any problems.
Other than finish a drive. You settled for field goals, but that's a little bit off. And the missed passes, what I look at it is that's a timing issue. Also, too, is what we don't know is what we don't know. I think that oblique injury on the deeper passes, you torqued a little bit, and he was just a hair off. So I think there's a timing oblique injury type thing worked into it. I know one thing with Drew Brees, he'll never say it, he'll work through it, but you could see that those passes were just a little off. And that's not all timing. That also may have to do with that oblique injury.
866-3200. So happy to have Mike Detillier with us tonight. Let's go to Eugene in New Orleans. Eugene, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports.
Hey, good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Mike just answered my observation. I was going to say that I thought Drew Brees' oblique may still be bothering him because Joe Morgan did what he was supposed to do, take the top off the defense, but the balls were late. And so since he already addressed it, you guys are doing a good job, and I'll just hang up on this.
Thank you,
Eugene. I do think that's, the timing issue is certainly part of it, but I do think, when you have that type injury, it does take a little bit off the fastball, and you just saw him a little bit off on that. My thing about it is, if I knew he had that injury and he, wasn't on, then I'm not throwing the football deep. I'm not throwing it that deep. Man, you were eating them alive, too, in that first half. I think maybe, you try to share the wealth sometimes with so many players because you have so many different elements in there. Man, I would have kept going to Brandon Cooks. That poor guy, he was spun around like a top in the first half. He had no clue where Cooks was. And it goes to show how much you hear this talk from general managers and coaches. Oh, it takes 2 years for a wide receiver to develop. Man, it took him 2 seconds to develop. You can't tell me that he didn't walk into that league, and he is so smart. Eric, the last show I did with you, I brought this up, his intelligence. That was something Mike Riley kept telling me. Mike, he is so smart. He can play every position. First game he played in the preseason, all 4 positions, X, Y, Z, in the slot. How many rookies do that? You got veterans that can't do that.
Right.
And so he was doing that. Is his ability to make people miss. I talked to Sean Mannion at the Manning Passing Academy, and he told me, what really catches my eye about Brandon is when you're on the field, you don't appreciate when you throw a ball and he takes off from people. What you really appreciate is when you're in the film room and you see a guy's got an angle on him and he's pulling away, you just kind of catch your breath. I put it in my draft book that he reminds me so much of a young Steve Smith when he first came out and was with the Ravens. I'm not sure he's not faster than Steve Smith on the open track, but he's competitive. He's a smaller receiver. He makes you miss. And you know what? He just kept feeding him the rock. And he was certainly the star of that game when you see what he brings to the table, but also to the offensive line play. I think that's the encouraging thing. People bring up Mark Ingram, Kyrie Robinson, Pierre. They all did their jobs very well, and I like what I see from Ingram, finishing off his runs. Kyrie is who he is. He's a power back. Pierre is one of the most versatile, talented guys in the game, especially on the screen. He's as good as you get. But nobody brought up how well that offensive line played to open up some holes for that
and setting the
protection.
pocket.
And the protection part, we didn't see that last year.
No, especially up the middle. And I think you saw Jonathan Goodwin come in and fit like a glove. I mean, it looked like he never missed a snap here from when he went to San Francisco back to New Orleans, and that was encouraging.
That was very encouraging, and also to Terron Armstead.
You've been on him from the beginning.
And I saw him play a lot at Arkansas Pine Bluff. He's a great athlete, and I think as the season moves along, he's going to be the best left tackle outside the NFC East. Now, you got Tyron Smith at Dallas, who's really good. You got Jason Peters with Philadelphia. Trent Williams is a really good player with the Redskins. And when Luke comes back from his suspension with the Philadelphia Eagles, that's some really good left tackle. Now, listen, their teams aren't great, but, man, they got some great left tackles in the NFC East. I think Armstead, at the end of the season, will be playing as well as any left tackle outside of the NFC East.
Well, that bodes well for the Saints. That bodes well for, again, keeping Drew Brees clean. Get back to Brandon Cooks for a moment. I've talked about it on my radio show, a little bit here on the television show. I just with Cooks now in the fold, hopefully Kenny Stills gets back from the quad injury. Jimmy Graham, Marcus Colston. You want to sprinkle in a guy like Meacham. I don't know when Toon gets on the field, to be honest with you. I just think that the Saints, it's going to be very difficult to double anybody. I mean, I think it's pick your poison at that point. I think Cooks makes everybody on the field better in that receiving core because now you got to play him one-on-one. What are your thoughts?
I agree with you. The handling of one thing Drew Brees does as well as anybody is he's like Magic Johnson. Everybody gets a shot, with the ball in their hands. Great distributor. I think he just does a fantastic job being able to make sure everybody gets involved and keep your head in the game. Because listen, a lot of times great players, they get frustrated when they don't get the ball thrown to them. I think he does a nice job of making sure everybody gets their little touches into it and gets involved in the game. What I didn't understand, and this was last Thursday, was Green Bay did not test Richard Sherman one time. My thing is, come on, you got to go at him at least one time. But they stayed away from that. I think the same way offensively, you've got to get everybody involved. He's a tremendous distributor, like a great point guard in basketball, to make sure that you get the touches. One thing I would like to see a little bit more, though, of is once you get a good lead, run the ball more. Play a little power football, because if you're having troubles defensively,
Keep
You
them off
can't
the field.
score if you got the football.
That's right.
Keep running it, keep running it, keep running it. And listen, none of those running backs are wearing down
Right.
because they're not getting a ton of carries.
And you got to be encouraged about the physicality of the running game against Atlanta, even maybe going back to the last quarter of last season, especially with Mark Ingram. As you mentioned, Ingram obviously playing for a contract, playing as well as he's ever played the NFL. You mentioned Kyrie Robinson, how well he's doing. And, Pierre is underrated as a runner, but, let's face it. Guy's always falling forward. In the screen game, he's one of the best.
Yeah, no question about that. The one thing with Mark I see today is that he trusts his instincts. I think a little bit like Reggie Bush. Reggie Bush you saw in New Orleans is totally different from the Reggie Bush you saw in Miami and Detroit. He's a much more patient runner. He's willing to take the ball inside. I think with Mark, similar to Reggie, a lot of times he wanted to kind of kick things to the outside. Well, man, listen, they got GPS on you. If you think you're going to outrun guys to the edge all the time, that's not going to happen. He's running much better between the tackles. His vision, he's trusting his instincts and his vision, but even better, he's finishing off his run strong. He's never going to be a great tackle breaker. That's not his style, but he finishes off his run strong. Kyrie's a different kind of guy out there. No, he breaks tackles and he is constantly falling forward. So you have that mix there, and then you can always throw in Pierre. But it was funny, late in the game when you needed a play, who did they go to? Pierre Thomas, Marcus Colston, Jimmy Graham.
Yep.
You knew those were your tried and true guys that got you there, and then Ingram scored late. But still, it does go to show the trust factor I have in those guys. That, they're my tried and true guys. They're the guys that'll be there for me. This offense is still potentially the best the Saints have ever had. When you look at it, because you're going to have difficulties stopping the passing game. Your offensive line is much better than it was a year ago. Your running game as a whole is better. The big question mark is, I think the shocking thing is, just how bad your defense played in that first game. And that doesn't clear up overnight.
No.
To think that all of a sudden we're going to go to Cleveland, we're going to beat them by 20 points, that's not going to work.
Well, and I failed to mention Joe Morgan and what he brings to the table now.
He's another guy that's the nuclear threat,
Right.
similar to Brandon Cooks. And, I think a lot of times, and I agree with Sean on this, at least a couple times every game, I'm going to shoot him up the field because then that safety can't play in that box. He's got to be respectful for what could potentially happen deep. It's kind of like the nuclear bomb.
Yes.
It's not that I'm going to use it, but I got it.
It's the
and
threat of
potential that I can use it.
Yes.
So you got to respect that a little bit on that. The offense, I have no qualms with it. Yes, they could have finished off a couple drives. Listen, mistakes happen. You saw with Marcus Colston. I'm convinced of this. No matter how bad the defense played, I think had Colston not had the fumble, the Saints go down there and score, and it's all over.
And the game's over.
It's over with.
Yes, I would agree. The big whipping boy is the whipping boy. It's been for a while now. He's back, Patrick Robinson. I've had conversations with guys that have been at camp that watch this battle every single day between Champ Bailey and Patrick Robinson when Champ was on the field. And, they tell me to a man, Patrick Robinson won the job. But Patrick Robinson seems to be the weak link on this defense. Mike, you've watched this kid at Florida State. You saw him come out as a number one pick. What are your thoughts about the maturation process of Patrick Robinson? And is he ready to be a number 2 corner in the NFL?
And he's not. He's not a starting cornerback in the NFL, but he's the best you got. What that tells me, if somebody's saying, well, he beat out Champ Bailey, that tells me how much Champ has slipped
That's right.
as a player. And I told you, as soon as they signed
sure
him,
did.
that, you know what, you were never going to see the young Champ Bailey. And he was lucky if he made this roster. If he made it, he would be the nickel dime guy. For every one Darren Sharper 2009 season, I've seen 25 guys that can't do it. You know what? Father Time chimes for everyone. Champ Bailey was a great football player, one of the best of his era, but you are not going to see that guy again. Patrick Robinson is not a starting cornerback in the NFL. He's a number 2 guy at best.
Right.
But right now, he's the best you got. Because is Corey White better than him?
Right.
Really, Corey's best position is inside nickel corner.
Yes.
Somewhere down the line, you're going to have to pass the baton to one of the rookies. Now, if you didn't know any better, looking at the OTAs, training camp, preseason, who was the second-round pick and who was the rookie free agent?
Well, I know you're talking about Brian Dixon.
Brian
right?
Dixon.
Right.
Didn't Brian play better than Stanley Jean-Baptiste?
Sure, which is why he made the team.
I really believe that somewhere down the line, like with Armstead, You're going to have to put the baton in Baptista's hands, and if you think Dixon's more ready now, you got to do it with him.
Yes.
These two guys, you've seen enough of him. There is no maturation process with Patrick Robinson. He is what he is. He's a very inconsistent player. What he doesn't have is great ball skills. Okay, I can teach him certain techniques. He is a fantastic athlete. He can run well.
Yes.
He's got really great recovery speed. He can't find the ball in flight. I can't teach you how to do that. It's like being a punt returner. Either you can or you can't. I can't teach you how to do that. No coach can. He is, at best, a backup cornerback in the National Football League. And right now, that's a major hole for this football team. But I will say this, they picked on Keenan Lewis, too.
Oh, they did.
They picked on Keenan Lewis, too.
They weren't afraid.
They had no fear factor of the Saints secondary, and that was the surprising part.
Mike, you look at Rob Ryan, he comes from the Buddy Ryan tree, like Greg Williams. When Greg Williams was here, especially when you look at that 09 defense, in a lot of cases, he masked a lot of deficiencies. How do you mask that deficiency at that cornerback position?
You're going to have to give him some help over the top. I mean, that's the only way you can do it, Eric. And I'll be honest with you, from the time he gets off the bus to the time he gets back on, teams are going to go after him. You've got a weak link in the chain. They're going to continuously kind of go after you. Now, listen, the coaches and the players can't say that, but they realize the situation they're in. So you try to do things schematically to give him a little bit of help over the top and do a little mixing and matching of coverages. You saw what they tried to do was a lot of zone coverage sets against Atlanta because they spread them out with 4 wide outs. You're not going to face a team with that many good receivers or that much talent at wide receiver with that much speed. Cleveland's a totally different football team, and they will attack the Saints differently. They will run the football, and one thing the Browns have is a premier center. Now, that's a rarity today. There are probably 3 or 4 what I call gold chip centers. Alex Mack is one of them. And Joe Thomas on the left side, there ain't many that, is in his zip code as a football player. So, despite the fact they lose Ben Tate, why would I get away from what's working for me? And look what they did against Pittsburgh. Why get away from that at all?
Run it till they stop it.
Yeah, and their best offensive player, it looks as though he won't be playing this game with Josh Morgan. Now, again, who knows with the commissioner?
Possibility Jordan Cameron may not play as well, right?
Yeah, and boy, listen, he has turned out to be one heck of a football player from at the tight end position. He's really a big wide out.
Yes.
He's not going to throw many blocks, but boy, he gets open, catches the football. He's banged up too. So you have that element going. So why wouldn't you try to run the football? The other part about it is, you keep the ball out of Drew Brees' hands. So until the Saints defense can stop the run, it's funny, that's something Rob brought up. Almost the first thing that came out of his mouth when he took over the Saints defense is, based off what he saw in 2012, we got to stop the run first, because if we don't, every team's going to come after us. I think this is a real close game in Cleveland. You look back at past history, it doesn't matter who's the coach, who's the players. I think it's the style of play keeps Cleveland in this game to the end. I do think the Saints win it, but really, really close.
You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports each and every Thursday night right here on WLAE TV with our live broadcast at 6 o'clock. We have a rebroadcast each and every Friday night on WLAE TV and Pelican Sports Television in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette. That happens at 10 p.m. 866-3200 is the phone number. Mike Detillier is our guest. We'll take a quick pause for the calls. We'll be right back. We'll talk Tulane. We'll talk LSU. We'll talk some more Saints as well. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com. At Natal's Air Conditioning, our motto is service honoring the golden rule. We're dedicated to providing the best air conditioning solution for your home or business in the New Orleans metro area. More information is available at 504-821-0005. Natal's Air Conditioning, a proud sponsor of the St. Jude Dream Home. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile. You're watching WLAE, New Orleans Public Television. Find us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher, each and every Thursday night right here on WLA TV. We have a great guest for you tonight, Mike Detillier of WWL Radio. And Mike, let's shift gears and talk a little bit about the LSU Tigers. And, you know, one of the big things that kind of maybe overshadowed the game a little bit, obviously they crushed Sam Houston State 56-0, and is the situation with Leonard Fournette and the Heisman pose in the end zone. Look, from what I've been able to gather about this kid, he is a good kid that comes from a good family, has a tremendous amount of pressure on him, coming out as the #1 high school player, staying in his own home state. And, you know, the kid made a mistake. And at the end of the day, unfortunately, in today's day of social media, people can hide behind their moniker and can trash anybody at any time. But, you know, he's apologized to the team. He's apologized to the coaching staff. Mike, what is your take on that, and what do you think happens from this point forward?
It's irrelevant to me. I'll be honest, it's irrelevant to me. I think it was his pressure valve that went off. You know, I've been carrying the weight of being the best high school football player in the country. I get to score. I didn't play well in the first game. My pressure valve went off, and I think that's what you saw. You know what? Listen, I would have done exactly what Les did. Talk to him about, hey, listen, don't do anything to hurt the football team. I understand what you're going through, but you got to understand the whole world is watching, and don't do it again. And so, you know what? It's what an 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid does. Listen, Patrick Peterson, when he did it, he had a lot more skins on the wall than what Fournette did.
Yes.
But you know what? To me, people have made a big thing of it, and really, I would much rather see him do it against Sam Houston than him do that against University of Alabama when you in a tight spot.
Yes.
So, you know, to me, no big deal.
Speaking of SEC play, and again, you know, UL Monroe, Sam Houston State, we get a chance to see a lot of freshmen. We'll talk about that in a moment. One of the things I took away from that Wisconsin game, though, Mike, is the offensive and defensive lines, I felt really they let the team down. This is kind of a rebuilding year. I think we're seeing that with the loss of so many juniors to the NFL over the last 3 years, but the defensive line just looked like that they weren't ready to go against Wisconsin, that physically they were beaten. And the same could be said for the offensive line. SEC play next week, Mississippi State. You tell me what you see when you look at that offensive defensive lines.
It was better against Sam Houston, but you got to consider the competition.
Yes.
Individually, that offensive line is the best offensive line that's ever been at LSU. As a group, they have played poor in week 1. Average in week 2. Now, I thought it was better, but I do know this about football, that offensive line play is getting 5 guys to work as one. And sometimes that takes a little bit of time. But individually, they are very talented. I don't have a problem with what's going to happen.
Will they be able to be smash mouth? Will they be able to be physical in the SEC
They're going to
play?
be physical. I mean, because you just look at the size and the strength of that particular team. I really see that being a big part of this team. My problems with LSU lies, like a baseball team, at pitcher, shortstop, defensive tackle, middle linebacker. Okay. Because, listen, if I'm Ole Miss or Mississippi State, I'm running the football right at you until you stop it. I'm sure in the world's not throwing it at that secondary. Yes. I will say this. I really believe, individually, I've seen teams that are better because of a Tyrann Mathieu, a LaRon Landry, and Eric Reed on this team, Morris Claiborne. I do not remember an LSU team with this much talent in the secondary. It may be the most talented group that I have ever seen collected at one time. When you think about Tre'Davious White and Rashard Robinson and Jalen Collins and Jalen Mills and Corey Thompson, and the 2 guys that comes up with interceptions are Ricky Jefferson and Dwayne Thomas, 2 backups.
That's right.
And I didn't even bring up Jamal Adams and Ed Parrish Jr.
Right.
I mean, can you remember another time when you have 8 or 9 guys with that type of talent? You think I'm picking on them guys? Oh, no, I'm running the football right at them until they can stop it. So it's an interesting LSU team. I really believe that if Les gets to 10 wins, and that includes a bowl win, It's the best coaching job he's ever done at LSU.
Because of the youth?
Because of the youth. Do you ever remember a year you're playing so many real freshmen, redshirt freshmen, sophomores?
That's a great point. 16 freshmen played against Sam Houston, if I'm not mistaken.
And that's the most, I mean, normally he's run around 13 to 15, somewhere in that range. And he plays 16. But really, the star of this team the first 2 weeks, Trayvon Durrell.
Yes.
You and I talked about this in the offseason that, I scouted him. He was at Bro Bridge. Skinny kid, ran track. And a lot of people, I don't know if he's going to hold up in the SEC playing like this. Well, he's meep, meep. He's down the field. He's a road runner. And what he's learned how to do is catch the football so well, tracking it and with his hands. You don't see him body catch everything. It's with his hands. That is something great. You know what? We can talk about Cam Cameron. He's done a fantastic job with this offense, but the most unsung coach on that LSU team has been Adam Henry. When you think about when he took over 3 years ago, Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham, and his elevation of their talent. Now listen, Buddy Ryan said it best a few years back. I'm a good coach and I know it, but I'm really better when I got better talent. He took one talent and he leveled it up. Look what he's done with Trayvon Durrell.
Right.
Man, Adam Henry has done a fantastic job coaching the wideouts for LSU, and you don't even hear about him, but I'm telling you, he's a guy that one day he's going to be coaching in the NFL or be a head coach somewhere. You just look at what he's done with that talent. He has done a fantastic job.
To the phone lines we go, 866-3200. Mike Detillier, our guest. James is in Franklinton. James, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports.
Hey, thank you, guys. Appreciate it. I have two questions for Mr. Detillier. When do you think Coach Miles is really going to go ahead and let Leonard Fournette really loose on the SEC? And what's going on with Malachi Dupree, the wide receiver out of John Curtis? I'll hang up and listen to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, James. I think it will always be running back by committee at LSU, but I think there will be a signature game for Leonard Fournette, where you're going to see that 16 carries, 140 yards, and it was even running back by committee last season with Jeremy Hill. Look late in the year, Terrence McGee was getting as many touches as Hill was. Now, when it came down to the big game, though, you fed the big dog on that. So I think it'll always be broken up. And when you have Kenny Hilliard playing as well as he's playing, and then you have Terrence.
Right.
The X factor, though, has been Darrell Williams.
Yes.
Darrell comes in and he gives, doesn't he look a little bit like Stephen Ridley? I know he wears the same number, but doesn't his running style very similar to that? So I think it will always be running back by committee, but there will be a signature game somewhere real fast where Leonard will be the bell cow back, and that's going to be it for the next 2.5 years, so to speak, until he finishes. But it will always be running back by committee. With Malachi, he had a knee injury.
Yes, he did.
And with the leg injury, and so he's come back and seeing that playing time. I know one thing, he is a major league talent, and you're going to see more and more of him. This is the type game to get him more immersed with the offense. When I see the quarterbacks play, one of the things I notice is they're not good from the pocket. You have to move both Brandon and Anthony east-west and move them a little bit because they're better throwers. The big difference is Anthony Jennings is really more effective in the deep middle, longer passes. Brandon's more effective short, medium range. So you know what that tells me? They're going to play both of them all year long, alternate them. And you know what? I think Cam does a great job of basically basing that offense on what you do best. But if you watch LSU and watch Anthony Jennings, his best plays have been the deeper pass. And Brandon, I think, is more comfortable in that short, medium range area of the field, which he did a lot in the high school ranks.
How big was this past weekend for Brandon Harris, considering he looked a little bit nervous against Wisconsin? Got a chance to get his legs under him, get a little playing time. By the time he got to his second series, he looked like he was very, very comfortable.
He's poised. He understands this game. I've been to 3 camps with him before he went to LSU. He's got a whip for an arm, and the one thing I did notice is how quickly the ball comes out, that the release point, and it's fast. It comes out of there real quickly. He's going to make some mistakes because he thinks, like every young quarterback, I can put the ball anywhere. But really what he does is work that short, medium range area to field extremely well. And boy, he's got some talent out there to throw to. What I want to see more from LSU is to incorporate more the tight end and the backs into that offense, because that will help Brandon. That's not Anthony Jennings' game,
yes,
but that is Harris's game. And you're going to have to, in some games, get a matchup with a tight end downfield and the backs flaring out. That's what McGee and Fournette do extremely well. It'll be interesting to see Cam just kind of devil out all them cards, how he can do it. This is an intriguing LSU team who I think they won't have a 56-0 win like they did against Sam Houston. They'll win against UL Monroe. But, man, listen, I give UL Monroe credit. They beat an ACC team in Wake Forest.
Oh, yeah.
Wake Forest thought that was a money game for them, and they got beat. I really believe Mississippi State ends up beating LSU. I think because of their front seven. Because you know what? LSU's not going to be able to run the football, and they're going to come after LSU. I think this is the year Mississippi State, who has been close with LSU, the big advantage is to Dak Prescott, who I got a chance to be with at the Manning camp. He is such a poised kid, and that defensive front seven is as good as you'll find in the SEC. I think this is the year State ends up beating LSU. And it's been so close for Mullen so many times, and they end up losing it in the fourth quarter.
Against Wisconsin, they had to utilize the run blitz to be able to stop Wisconsin's running game. Of course, Wisconsin had a problem with their top running back getting injured. Is that the way they're going to have to stop the run going forward? Are they going to have to utilize the linebackers to do that, or can they do it straight up?
No, they can't do it straight up. The strength of that team is really their secondary and the two edge rushers, and Donnell Hunter and Rasco. They can come off the edge and really get a lot of pressure. What I don't see yet is that ability to be stout against the run. Somewhere down the line, listen, I think he's a guy that gives you everything. He's got DJ Welter, everything.
Oh, I know.
But God made people bigger, faster, stronger. Kendall Beckwith has got to be the guy in the middle. He's got to be that guy. I know DJ knows it more than with Kendall. Kendall was a quarterback, a defensive end in high school. Somewhere down the line, you know what? We both have kids, so to speak, where you got to hand them the keys to the car and say, you know what to do.
Right.
Don't mess it up.
Say a novena and let
just
them go.
Hope for the best, and my dad used to say that. Hope for the best, pray for the worst. But I knew what he meant.
Yes, exactly.
I knew what he meant on that particular point.
Let's go to Ryan in Mid-City. Ryan, thanks for calling Inside New Orleans Sports.
Yeah, how y'all doing today?
Great,
how
Ryan.
y'all doing? I got two questions. I got a statement. I think Drew Brees, if he wouldn't have threw that ball and held it, I think the Saints would have won that game. Drew Brees got to be a quarterback that's going to run for a first down. We're not going to be another championship team if Drew Brees don't run for those little first downs. You have too much open, wide space not to just take off and run. You're not going to be a championship team if you don't take off and run with that ball. And I got another thing. I think LSU, I heard what you just said, that Mississippi State is going to beat LSU, but I don't think LSU just need a little bit more fire on their belly. And I don't think no one, not even Texas A&M, could beat them. So I'm just going to get off the phone and just listen. Thank you.
Ryan, thank you for the phone
Thank you,
call.
Ryan.
What about Brees first?
No, man, my thing is, listen, if you got a 35-year-old quarterback with an oblique injury, I'm telling him don't take any hit. And so I understand what Ryan's saying. There is some opportunities, and Matt Ryan did a great job of doing it.
Better than I've ever seen him.
The best. And he had a couple opportunities, but with Drew and knowing that he's got that injury, you be very careful with him. Ryan, I'm with you on this, but I'm a year later. I think LSU's run for the national championship is 2015, when all those young puppies grew up into the big dogs in the yard. They're an interesting team because do you know any more about the quarterback situation today than you did before Wisconsin? No. You've got a little bit more tape on it, but I think you know the strengths and weaknesses of both of them. Tom Brady used to train in New Orleans with Tom Shaw for many years.
I remember that.
And so, Tom would always invite me to watch. And one of the things Tom would always bring up is to measure a quarterback is what he does under fire. What he does when everything else is breaking down around him, you're in a tough situation, how you handle the heat. And he came up with the line of there are oven-baked players and microwave players. And the microwave guys, they cooked from the outside in. The oven-baked players are cooked from the inside out. And so his deal is, I want to be the oven guy. When everything's around me breaking down, I want to get that strength and be able to pull it out. I think one of the things you got to look at here is we really don't know and haven't seen Anthony Jennings, and certainly haven't seen Brandon Harris in that spot. Anthony Jennings did a great job late against Arkansas.
Absolutely.
He made a big pass play and a big run.
Under duress.
Under duress in that spot. Against Wisconsin, man, Wisconsin helped them out quite a bit in that game.
Yes.
Because, listen, I did shows right after in Wisconsin. Man, listen, they were ready to fire Gary Anderson. Why get away from the run and throw the football when you couldn't, that quarterback, he couldn't hit the backside of a barn with a bazooka the way he was throwing the ball. Keep running it. LSU hadn't stopped it. And I think the injury to Melvin Gordon, to me, that was a questionable deal.
Right.
I think he wanted to play Clement one way or another. I think he wanted to play him in that game. And even
took a lot of heat for it now.
And one of the things Melvin said after the game, and I give him credit for it, he had a little bit of titanium in the backbone, is this football team's never won a big game. He said, basically since Russell Wilson left, this football team has never won a big game when the fire's on. He basically pointed that finger at Gary Anderson and said, you messed this game up. We had it won. You messed it up, and you took me out when I was hot. You got the emotion of a 21-year-old kid saying what everybody thought.
Right.
At that point.
Speaking about heat, let's talk a little bit about what happened at Tulane, especially against Georgia Tech. Tanner Lee, he's got all the measurables you want. He got a little problem with the heat, a little maybe concussion problem. They weren't real clear on why he was taking out the game. We've got a little body of work on him now. Obviously, he can make all the throws. He's a smart kid. From what CJ says, when he makes a mistake, he realizes what the mistake is. But Micah, as I've watched him over the last two games, I just see that he tends to lock in on receivers. He's got that young tunnel vision. Georgia Tech was able to skies their coverages a little bit and baited him into a couple throws. The kid's got everything you want in a quarterback, but there's going to be some growing pains here.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, week one, people were trying to compare him to Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. You know who he reminds me a lot of? Patrick Ramsey. I mean, he's got a lot of the same sort of elements Patrick did. And Patrick was a little bit of a riverboat gambler. I think I can get that ball in that spot.
Trusting that arm.
And trusting the arm. And I think you see that with Tanner. One of the elements I see at Tulane, and it's the hardest thing in doing what I do, because I get tons of calls, and it's part of my business too, in scouting high school players for the college ranks, is finding big men. Offensive linemen, defensive linemen.
Can they get those here in Louisiana?
You know what's the crazy thing about it is when training camp started in August, over the last 2 years, Louisiana has produced 11 players going to the NFL. Linemen, offensive linemen.
But they're going to the big boys, right?
And so that, to me, that's a change in kind of universal, because listen, we didn't grow up in that.
No.
This place does not normally grow that 6'5", 300-pound guy. Speed. It's defensive backs. It's wideouts. It's running backs. Defensive linemen. And that's a surprise too. But you've seen a lot of them. But a lot of them aren't 6'5". They're 6'2", 6'3", in that range. They're the hardest people to find, especially defensively. Offensive line-wise, you can see the deficiencies at Tulane. That's an area where until CJ is going to be able to get quality offensive linemen and pass rushers, which, I can find you a quarterback quicker than I can find you a pass rusher today. Pure and simple is a 6'3", 6'4" guy as a junior and senior in high school. He's not playing defensive end outside linebacker. I'm playing him at wide receiver or tight end so he can score for me. And I think the colleges take that approach too. So it's getting much more difficult to find that athlete.
Where do they find them now, Mike? I mean, look, they have made inroads with Louisiana kids. You're seeing the homegrown talent. It's one of the beautiful things about watching Tulane now. You're seeing all these high school kids from Southeast Louisiana, from Louisiana as a whole. But you mentioned it. I mean, again, Alabama's coming in here. Texas A&M's coming in here. You got some of the
UCLA.
Big 12, right? I mean, come on. So how does a Tulane get bigger players to play along that offensive defensive
You're not going to be able
lines?
to do it. I mean, basically, what you're going to have to go is to a projection type player. Maybe a guy who's a little undersized, maybe not quite that 6'5" guy who's 6'4", and you hope he grows a little bit into that range. But you know what? Those guys are not normally going to end up at Tulane. No, those top guys, if they don't go to LSU, they're going to go to Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Texas A&M, UCLA, because, I mean, I mean, they're all over the state. I've never seen it, never gotten as many phone calls, never as many evaluations on big linemen, because they see the sea change too. Is that, man, all of a sudden now Louisiana's starting to put out some offensive linemen. I would get them on the defensive backs and wideouts and running backs and even defensive linemen, which defensive tackle-wise is a lot. But it's the edge guys that's are really, really difficult to get. And those guys, if they got a shot, they're going to go somewhere else. And I think those are the hot guys in November and December that maybe not to discourage or say anything bad, but let's say I commit to Louisiana Tech, but I'm a 6'4", 225-pound guy. All of a sudden, I'm a 6'5" guy, and I put on 10, 12 pounds of weight, and I got Texas A&M, and I got somebody else after me in Arkansas and Tennessee, and now I got UCLA and Jim Moore Jr. recruiting this area. Arizona State is all over this state from one end to the next. So you can see where it's going to be tougher and tougher for a Tulane, a Louisiana Tech, UL Lafayette to get the ones and twos. You're going to have to go after the threes and go after some projection guys. This game, when we grew up, it was sideline. It was in the hashes.
Yes.
In the hashes. That's how you played the game. Today, sideline to sideline. So you want the athletes now better, because I think that's even what Alabama and LSU's doing. They're getting athletes that can run the field. It's no longer that situation of that 350-pound guy, 330-pound guy. You might see it every once in a while, but with the spread, and I'm keeping you on the field 85 plays, I'm going to wear you down till you are blowing chunks out there.
I'll take it a step further, Mike. Normally you'd say maybe Tulane go to the junior college ranks, maybe get Division I transfers. You're competing against the Southeasters of the world now for those guys. And you look at what Southeastern's been able to do. You mentioned before the show about Southeastern and the type of talent they've been able to put together. That's their opponent this week.
Ron Roberts has done a fantastic job at Southeastern Louisiana. I thought last year underrated for what he did. And I did a couple camps with Brian Bennett, who's a California kid, went to Oregon, got beat out by, what's that guy's name, Marcus Mariota? He's pretty good out there. So he goes to Southeastern, and he became the Johnny Manziel of the Southland Conference. And not for what he does off the field, but what he does on the field. He's improvisational, runs around, make plays with his feet, can throw off the run real well. He went to Jeff Garcia's camp this summer to learn how to be a better pocket passer. He went to the Manning camp. And, he's always going to be that guy, I think, that will be a much more accurate passer at the pro ranks than he will be at the college ranks, because he's going to learn how to be a better pocket passer. Time tells you better stay there and not run, but he's a fantastic athlete. I really believe the second best team in the state of Louisiana is Southeastern Louisiana. And I think they're going to, listen, I think Tulane can keep it close for a while. I'm just telling you, Brian Bennett's going to make some plays that you're going to say, wow. And this is Southeastern's, this is their Super Bowl. We're going to play Tulane. They're not giving us no respect. This is a bowl game for them, while Tulane's coming off of a loss, getting beat up physically. When you play Georgia Tech, they pound you till you can't take it anymore.
Yes.
I'm telling you, Southeastern Louisiana, it's the second best team in the state. I include UL Lafayette in that, Louisiana Tech. Mark Hudspeth's a guy I've known for a long time, but Southeastern is really good, and really kudos to Ron Roberts, what he's done there. Fantastic coach, and Brian Bennett, he's a once-in-a-kind-of-lifetime quarterback.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We got about a minute and a half left. Let's go to DJ in New Orleans East. DJ, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports.
Hello?
Hey, DJ?
Yes, sir.
Welcome. We got about a minute if you can go ahead and give your question.
Okay. Is Drew Brees just hurt? Or not? I mean, like what's the? But I got the schedule in front of me. We play Cleveland, Minnesota, Dallas, and Tampa Bay, and then after that, it's like the bye week. We're going to be like 3-1 or 4-1.
Well, we'll ask Mike. Thank you for the phone call.
I think they roll through, and I do think that oblique injury is something that you don't get over right away. I think it doesn't affect him on the shorter stuff, but on the deeper passes, when you got that torque, I think it does, and I think you saw him just a little bit short. And one thing I don't want him doing is running downfield. You know what? Hit the deck and do what you got to do. Listen, save yourself for another day. It's a long season. This is a good offensive team. The shocking thing is how bad they play on defense, and I think it's just gut feeling that this football team's going to struggle a little bit the next couple weeks. I think 4 or 5 games into it, I think you will have that leadership and communication in, and we'll see a lot of what we saw last year.
Mike Detillier, thanks so much.
Thanks
for
so
being
much,
with us.
Eric.
Certainly
Appreciate
it. And thanks so much for watching. Again, remember there's a rebroadcast of this show each and every Friday night right here on WLAE and Pelican Sports Television in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette. That happens at 10 p.m. You can also catch me on the radio, 990 a.m. WGSO, weekdays, 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. Also, if you've missed any of the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports, or if you'd like to check out my podcast or listen to my radio show on the internet, you can do that at ericasher.com as well. Again, special thanks to Mike Detillier for joining us tonight. Also to the WLAE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Donovan Joseph, Kenny Juno, and of course my director, William Hill. For Mike Detillier, my name is Eric Asher. Thanks so much for watching Inside New Orleans Sports. We'll see you right back here next Thursday night, 6 p.m. Have a great evening.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com. At Natal's Air Conditioning, our motto is service honoring the golden rule. We're dedicated to providing the best air conditioning solution for your home or business in the New Orleans metro area. More information is available at 504-821-0005. Natal's Air Conditioning, a proud sponsor of the St. Jude Dream Home. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.